In my reviews, I have used my fair share of foul language, because I do honestly believe that profanity is sometimes the best way to convey an idea, and for me, sometimes profanity is the only way to convey how much a movie bothers me. But saying fuck you to the writers and or directors of these movies, as I sometimes do, doesn't really amount to much. It makes me feel better and it gets my point across, but it's not really going to hurt anyone, or at least I sincerely hope it doesn't. It is at best petty and immature, and if any of the writers or directors ever heard me say fuck you in my reviews, they would likely and justifiably just ignore it. But what about slurs? Is there a difference between telling someone to go fuck themselves and referring to someone as any number of slurs? I think there is, but the proponents of removing certain language from our entertainment and everyday speech don't seem to make that distinction. And that is an issue that has been running around in my mind for a while, so I figure I would finally just knuckle down and get this all out in a video. There are those in society and in the media who would like to see certain kinds of language removed from our entertainment and regular course of discourse. All of these people have their hearts in the right place, and typically they are trying to solve a problem that, in my view, hasn't ever received the serious attention that it deserves. Bullying. It is a bigger problem than people realize, and it has led to more problems down the line than people realize as well. I agree with these people on that issue 100%, but the problem for me is that they take that to an extreme that I cannot see myself ever aligning with, and it makes it very difficult for me to back them up 100%. Let's start with the Anderson Cooper interview on Ellen. This interview was all about slurs and bullying, but then the issue came up of the word gay used in a movie trailer.
And I was sitting in a movie theater over the weekend, and there was a preview of a movie, and in it the actor said, "That's so gay." And I was shocked that not only did they put that in a movie, but that they put that in the preview. They thought that was a preview to the movie to get people to go and see it.
After that interview, you read all kinds of nonsensical articles with headings like, Anderson Cooper blasts Vince Vaughn, or Anderson Cooper tries to take down The Dilemma, which is the name of the film in question. Anderson Cooper did nothing of the sort. He was not out to get Vince Vaughn or his movie. He said very clearly that he was at a movie and that an actor used the term gay in the trailer. He never mentioned the movie by name, and he never mentioned Vince Vaughn by name. It's just that everyone else just kind of figured out what movie he was talking about. I don't think that Anderson Cooper was trying to cause problems for the film, but he really didn't have to either, because if you saw that trailer, you will know that there are 1,000 reasons not to see that stupid thing, the least of which is the use of the word gay. But when I went and watched the trailer in question, something caught my attention. Something that made me seriously confused as to what Cooper's issue even really was.
Ladies and gentlemen, electric cars. They're totally gay. It's true. I don't mean that they're homosexual gay, but I do mean your parents are the chaperone at the dance gay, right? You tuck it in and wear it real high gay. I don't want to disrespect anybody because I'm not about that, but I think we're understanding what we're trying to talk about here, right?
Not homosexual gay. So they're specifically stating that the term is not directed at homosexuals. So if it's not being used as a slur, then what's the problem? That we're using the word at all, in any negative context? And then something Cooper said in his interview came back to mind.
The F word is used, or the term "that's so gay" among kids today. I mean, you hear it from coaches, you hear it on the playing fields, you hear it in the hallways of schools, and it's used not just against kids who are actually gay or lesbian. It's used against anybody who's perceived that way, or even just as an insult to anybody in this day and age among kids. And
So what is it that we are really trying to stop here? Are we trying to stop all pejoratives, or are we trying to stop all bad language, period? Because I personally am for the first, but to try and remove any negative term in any context that was originally used in another context is first, impossible, second, off the point that Cooper is trying to make. By that logic, calling someone who's acting silly a dum-dum head is just as bad as calling them gay. When you specifically refer to one group of people as a stereotyping pejorative, yes, I agree that's bad. But when you use a word like gay to mean something like lame, what is it? It's just one word that can mean many things, and the word gay has already meant many things in its long history. This is another one of Anderson's arguments that really didn't sync up with me.
Look, if a kid in the classroom uses the N-word, a teacher will discipline that child or bring that child to the principal's office or talk to the child at least. I've talked to so many kids who will say a teacher will hear the F-word being thrown around in his or her classroom and do nothing about it. That's got to stop.
The word nigger has only meant one thing in the United States since its use in the days of slavery, a pejorative directed specifically at black people. Its use before those days is so long gone, and its use as a slur has so permeated the culture that it would be nearly impossible at this point to change its meaning. That word is very different from the word gay or fag that have had shifting life cycles ever since they were introduced. For me, the two are not comparable. And even if they were, what of the use of the word nigger in our classic literature? The word was used often in all kinds of classic works, most notably Mark Twain. Hell, my 2006 copy of The Last Battle still contains the term darkies. In The Silver Chair, it is suggested that characters will only survive one of their experiences by acting gay. It's just that in that case, the term only meant happy. Some of these terms are now outdated and simply make the text sound silly, but some of it simply reflects the language of the time. I mean, what are we to do? Pretend that these words were never used at all? Pretend that no one ever had any prejudice of any kind in this country? For me, Cooper's argument simply extends itself too far. I have a moral compass, I understand the difference between a slur and a joke, and I think most people in this country do as well. Using a term to mean something else isn't always the same as using it in a derogatory context. South Park did a great episode on that issue when they tried to change the definition of fag to mean annoying people or people who own a Harley. And I would be very curious to know what Cooper thought about that episode. I have nothing against what Anderson Cooper is trying to do here. I just have a problem with the reach of what he is trying to do. But the term gay is only one issue here and has very little bearing on the reviews that I do. I believe I have used that term maybe once or twice in my general reviews, never in my main reviews. Not because it's controversial, but because I honestly don't use the term very much in my real life. It's just a little too 12 years old for me. But there is one term that I have used so many times that it's hard to count. The word retard. To open up this subject, let's look at a PSA I recently saw done by the good people at Glee.
It's not acceptable to call me a nigger.
It's not acceptable to call me a spick.
To call me a chink.
To call me a fag.
It's not acceptable to call me a kike.
It is not acceptable to call me a retard or call yourself or your friends retarded when they do something foolish.
The R word is the same as every minority slur. Treat it that way and don't use it.
Now here I can understand their position a little bit better than I did with Anderson Cooper. All of the slurs used in that ad have been rallied against for years, but retard is a term used so casually that no one, including myself, really thinks about it or takes the time to try and protect people who actually suffer from mental retardation. If you call someone a retard for doing something stupid, the implication naturally is that they're just as stupid as people who are actually retarded, which of course implies that all mentally retarded people are stupid. Obviously, that is not my direct intention whenever I use that term, but I do understand and sympathize with advocates who have a problem with this. Having said that, however, I still see a distinction between using the word retard to refer to someone who has done something foolish and using the term directed specifically at someone who is actually mentally retarded. The context is completely different. It is only incidental that it happens to link the two rhetorically. But I'm not saying that these people don't have a legitimate grievance. After all, it is a lot harder to change the meaning of a word that describes a condition than it is a word that describes a race. I'm only saying that I think people who hear myself and others use these terms understand the difference between a slur and a joke. For example, the movie Tropic Thunder came under heavy fire for the lines like, "never go full retard in a movie," or just plain mocking the mentally disabled. Now, the movie was not going out of its way to be malicious towards people with mental handicaps. They were actually being malicious towards people who are malicious towards people with mental handicaps. The whole point was that most of the time when Hollywood does a movie about people with mental retardation, they A, don't use actors who are actually retarded, and yes, there are a lot of them out there, and B, the reason they don't use actors who are actually mentally retarded is because the actors they do use just want to win awards. The whole joke was really about Hollywood not giving a shit about the issues that they pretend to give a shit about in the films they make. However, I can totally understand why the advocates for the mentally challenged would have had a problem with this, joke or not. And the makers of Tropic Thunder were very classy about the controversy. They didn't change the film, but they did include a PSA on every copy of the DVD that was sold. Clearly, like me, they aren't totally unsympathetic to the problems these people have. I have had people write to me who were offended when I said that the premise for the movie Minority Report had Down syndrome. People who actually knew people with Down syndrome and were naturally protective of their feelings. I myself do not know anyone who has Down syndrome, but that isn't why I use these terms, nor do I think that if I did know someone with Down syndrome or retardation, that I would stop using them at all. I think rather than trying to remove words from our everyday speech and entertainment, we just need to keep things in perspective. There is a line between slurs and jokes, though I do admit that that line can be blurred on many occasions. So, in closing, I think that at the moment the issue of the words we use isn't very organized. There are legitimate points being made on both sides, but for my part, I don't intend to stop using the words I use in my reviews. I would hope that the people who watch my reviews understand the context of what I'm saying and know that while my use of language might be strong, I am not trying to hurt anyone in any meaningful context. As to the people who still have a problem with some of the language I use, particularly the word retard, I am truly sorry for your feelings. I really am. So, I'm not really sure where to go from here in the discussion, so let me know what you guys think about this. Leave a comment and just discuss your feelings.